He should have noticed the change earlier. The shorter replies. The distracted smiles. The way she held his hand without really holding it anymore. But love has a dangerous habit. It makes people ignore what hurts them. The airport was crowded that evening. Announcements echoed through the terminal while travelers rushed toward their gates. Yet somehow, in the middle of all that noise, he only noticed her. Olivia, standing beside him with her coat wrapped tightly around her arms, staring at the departure screen. This trip was supposed to help them. A fresh start. 1 week away together. No work. No stress. Just them. Or at least, that's what he believed. "Do you think this will fix us?" she asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. He forced a small smile. "It's not supposed to fix us," he replied quietly. "It's supposed to remind us why we stayed together in the first place." For a moment, she looked at him like she wanted to say something more. But before she could, her expression changed completely. Shock, confusion, emotion. His eyes followed her gaze across the terminal. And then he saw him. A man standing near the coffee shop. Well-dressed, confident, watching her with the kind of familiarity that instantly made his chest tighten. Her ex. The one she once promised meant nothing anymore. I didn't know he'd be here," she whispered. But she was already stepping away from him. Already moving toward the past she claimed she had left behind. "Just 5 minutes," she said softly. 5 minutes. That was all she asked for. And because he loved her, he nodded, completely unaware that those 5 minutes were about to end their entire relationship. He watched her walk away. Slowly, almost carefully, like she already knew this moment mattered more than it should. The distance between them wasn't far, just a few steps across the airport terminal. But somehow, it already felt impossible to cross. He stayed near the boarding gate, gripping the handle of his suitcase tightly while pretending not to stare, pretending not to care, pretending not to notice the way her entire expression had changed the second she saw him. Her ex. At first, the conversation looked harmless, awkward, even. A polite smile. A few words exchanged. The kind of interaction people have when they unexpectedly run into someone from their past. That's what he wanted to believe. But then, she laughed. A real laugh. Soft. Natural. The kind he hadn't heard from her in months. Something inside him sank immediately. Because no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't ignore the difference anymore. She looked alive standing next to that man. More alive than she ever looked standing next to him lately. His phone vibrated softly. A message from her. "Please wait a little longer." He stared at the words silently, then looked up again. She wasn't even facing him anymore. Her full attention belonged to someone else now. Passengers continued boarding around him. The loudspeaker announced final calls for multiple flights. People moved quickly, but he stayed frozen in place, watching, thinking, hurting. And then, the moment happened. Small, simple, deadly. Her ex reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. His chest tightened instantly. Not because of jealousy, because of realization. That single moment told him everything she couldn't say out loud. The relationship had already started slipping away long before this airport. Long before tonight. Maybe even long before he realized it. Another boarding announcement echoed through the terminal. Final call. He looked at her again. One last time. Waiting for her eyes to find him. Waiting for her to remember he was still standing there. Still waiting. Still choosing her. But she never turned around. Not once. And suddenly, something inside him became quiet. Not healed. Not okay. Just finished. He slowly picked up his suitcase. Took one final look at the woman he loved. Then turned toward the gate. Because sometimes, the hardest thing in life isn't being abandoned. It's realizing someone stopped choosing you long before they actually left. The boarding gate was almost empty now. Most passengers had already entered the plane. Only a few airport staff remained near the counter, repeating the final announcement with tired voices. Still, he hesitated. Not because he doubted his decision. Because a part of him still hoped she would run back. Call his name. Stop him before it was too late. But she didn't. Across the terminal, she was still standing with her ex. Still talking. Still smiling in ways she no longer smiled with him. That realization hurt more than anger ever could. Slowly, he handed his boarding pass to the employee at the gate. "Have a good flight," she said politely. He forced a nod. Then stepped forward. One step. Then another. Each one feeling heavier than the last. Not because he was leaving the airport. Because he was leaving her. Maybe forever. Inside the plane, everything felt strangely quiet. People settled into their seats. Flight attendants spoke calmly. Luggage compartments closed overhead. Normal things. Ordinary things. Yet none of it felt real. He sat beside the window, staring out at the glowing airport lights. And there she was. Still outside the gate area. Still unaware that he was gone. His phone remained silent in his hand. No calls. No messages. Nothing. A painful laugh almost escaped his lips. Because somehow, even now, he was still waiting for her to notice his absence. Minutes later, the plane slowly began moving. The runway lights blurred outside the window. And finally, his phone vibrated. Her name appeared on the screen. For a second, his heart reacted before his mind did. But he didn't answer. The call ended. Then another came immediately. And another. Followed by messages. "Where are you? Please answer. Are you serious right now?" He stared at the screen quietly. Emotionless. Because suddenly, the sadness felt different. Colder. Cleaner. Like something inside him had finally broken completely. The plane accelerated down the runway. And as the city lights disappeared behind him, he made a decision. Not out of anger. Not revenge. But self-respect. He turned his phone off. Placed it beside him. And looked out into the dark sky ahead. Because sometimes, the most painful goodbyes happen without a single word. And sometimes, walking away is the only way left to save yourself. Wait, where is he? The question left her lips casually at first, almost unconcerned, because deep down, she still believed he would be there, waiting patiently near the gate like always. That was the problem. He had always waited for her, always understood, always forgiven. So she never imagined a world where he would finally choose himself instead. Her ex was still speaking, but she barely heard him anymore. Something felt wrong suddenly. A strange heaviness settled in her chest as she looked toward the boarding gate again. Empty. Completely empty. Her heartbeat slowed for a second, then sped up instantly. "No," she whispered softly. Without another word, she quickly walked toward the gate. Her heels echoed sharply against the airport floor. Faster. Faster. Until she finally reached the counter. But it was already closed. The employee behind the desk looked at her politely. "Miss, boarding has ended." She forced a nervous smile. "There was another passenger waiting here," she said quickly. "Tall, dark jacket. He was supposed to board with me." The employee typed something into the computer, then looked back up calmly. "He boarded 20 minutes ago." The words hit harder than expected, like cold water suddenly crashing over her. "He left?" she asked quietly. The employee nodded. "Yes, miss. The flight is preparing for departure now." For a moment, everything around her became blurry. The noise, the lights, the people passing by. None of it felt real anymore. Because for the first time, she realized he actually did it. He stopped waiting. Her hands trembled slightly as she grabbed her phone. She called him immediately. Once, twice, 3 times. No answer. Her breathing became uneven. A feeling she hadn't experienced before slowly crept into her chest. Panic. Not because he boarded the plane. Because she suddenly understood why he did. Images replayed rapidly in her mind. Her laughing with her ex. Ignoring him. Asking him to wait a little longer. Not noticing the hurt in his eyes. Not realizing the moment she crossed a line. Another call. Straight to voicemail. That's when fear truly hit her. Because suddenly, this didn't feel like a simple argument anymore. It felt final. Her ex stepped closer carefully. "Olivia," he started softly. But she stepped away immediately. Now she saw everything differently. The conversation, the smiles, the lost time. None of it mattered anymore, because the only person who truly cared for her had walked away while she was busy looking backward. Tears slowly filled her eyes as she stared toward the runway outside the giant airport windows. And then, she saw it. The airplane slowly moving into the dark night sky, leaving, taking him further away every second. A painful realization settled deep inside her chest. Sometimes, you don't lose someone in a dramatic moment. Sometimes, you lose them quietly. One ignored feeling. One wrong choice. 5 more minutes too many. And by the time you finally understand what happened, they are already gone. The ride home felt unbearable. She sat quietly in the backseat, staring out the window while city lights blurred past her. Her phone remained in her hand the entire time. Cold. Heavy. Useless. Because no matter how many times she called, he never answered. At first, she tried convincing herself he was just angry, that he needed space, that once the plane landed, he would calm down and call her back like he always did. But deep down, she knew this felt different. Too different. When she finally reached her apartment, the silence hit immediately. No messages waiting. No missed calls. No "I arrived safely." Nothing. She walked slowly through the living room, dropping her bag beside the couch. Everything around her looked normal. Yet somehow, everything had changed. Her eyes landed on the framed photo near the shelf. The two of them smiling together months earlier. Happy. Or at least pretending to be. She picked it up carefully. And suddenly, the memories became impossible to ignore. The late-night talks. The promises. The way he always stayed patient with her even when she pushed him away emotionally. And worst of all, the way she slowly stopped appreciating him because she believed he would never leave. That realization hurt more than guilt. Because now she understood the truth. She hadn't lost him at the airport. She started losing him long before that. The airport was simply the moment he finally gave up trying alone. Her phone vibrated suddenly. Her heart jumped instantly. But the screen showed someone else. Her ex. She stared at the name silently for a few seconds before rejecting the call. Then another message appeared. "I didn't mean to cause problems between you two." She almost laughed bitterly. Because the problem wasn't him. The problem was her. Her confusion. Her hesitation. Her inability to let go of the past while expecting someone else to keep fighting for her future. Slowly, she sat down on the edge of the couch. Exhaustion settled into her body. But sleep felt impossible tonight. Because every quiet second forced her to face something painful. The man who truly loved her had stood there waiting, while she chose to emotionally revisit someone who already belonged in her past. And now, the person who once waited endlessly for her was gone. Hours later, she opened their old messages again, scrolling slowly, reading things she ignored before. Small caring texts, check-ins, sweet reminders, effort, so much effort. And suddenly, she realized something terrifying. Love doesn't disappear all at once. Sometimes it fades quietly, when only one person keeps trying to hold everything together. Tears finally slipped down her face as she stared at the last message he ever sent her hours earlier. "Take care of yourself." That was it. No anger. No insults. No dramatic goodbye. Just 4 simple words. And somehow, that hurt more than hatred ever could. Because deep inside, she knew those words sounded like the end. By the time the plane landed, he felt empty. Not broken. Not angry. Just exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that comes after loving someone for too long while slowly feeling them drift away. He walked through the airport alone, suitcase rolling quietly beside him. No one waiting. No excited messages. No reason to check his phone anymore. Still, his eyes glanced at the dark screen once. Habit. Nothing more. Then he slipped it back into his pocket and kept walking. Because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about how to save the relationship. He was thinking about how to save himself. Outside, cold night air hit his face instantly. The city looked unfamiliar. Bright lights. Tall buildings. Strangers everywhere. A completely different place. Exactly what he needed. A fresh start. Or at least the chance to breathe without constantly feeling unwanted. A black car pulled up near the curb. "Mr. Carter?" the driver asked. He nodded quietly and got inside. As the car moved through the city streets, he leaned back against the seat and closed his eyes. But no matter how hard he tried, the airport replayed in his mind. Her smile with her ex. The way she forgot he was standing there waiting. The way she never looked back. That part hurt most. Not the ex. Not the conversation. The fact that she stopped noticing his pain long before he left. His phone vibrated again. This time, he didn't need to look to know it was her. The calls had continued the entire flight. Messages too. Apologies. Questions. Excuses. He ignored them all. Not to punish her. Because he genuinely didn't know what else was left to say anymore. Some damage doesn't happen suddenly. It happens slowly. Quietly. Until one final moment makes everything collapse at once. The car finally stopped in front of a modern apartment building. Tall. Elegant. Quiet. His company had arranged everything for the business project he was supposed to handle during the trip. Originally, she was supposed to be here with him. That thought lingered painfully for a second before disappearing again. Because now, that future no longer existed. Inside the apartment, silence greeted him immediately. He dropped his suitcase near the door and walked toward the giant window overlooking the city skyline. Beautiful. Cold. Distant. Just like the feeling inside his chest. Slowly, he pulled out his phone one last time. Dozens of missed calls. Unread messages. Her name covering the screen. He stared at it quietly. Then opened their conversation. His thumb hovered for a second before typing. Not an argument. Not blame. Not revenge. Just honesty. "I hope one day you understand why I left." He read the message once. Then pressed send. After that, he turned the phone off completely. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Just finally. Because sometimes, moving on doesn't happen when love disappears. It happens when the pain of staying becomes heavier than the fear of leaving. She read his message 3 times. Then a 4th. And somehow, each time hurt more than the last. "I hope one day you understand why I left." No anger. No insults. No accusations. Just disappointment. Quiet disappointment. And that was exactly why it broke her. Because deep down, she already understood. The apartment felt suffocating now. Every corner reminded her of him. The coffee mug he always used. The hoodie he left hanging near the door. Even the silence itself felt different. Colder. Empty. Like something important had been removed from her life without warning. Or maybe, with too many warnings she ignored. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at old photos on her phone. Pictures from happier days. Road trips. Late-night dinners. Stupid smiling selfies. Back when loving him felt easy. Back when she still made him feel chosen. Tears blurred her vision slowly. Because now she could finally see the truth clearly. He didn't leave because of one airport conversation. He left because he grew tired of feeling second place in her heart. And she had let that happen. Little by little. Without noticing. Her phone buzzed again. Her ex. Another message. "Can we talk?" She stared at it for a moment. Then deleted the conversation completely. Because suddenly, none of it mattered anymore. Not the nostalgia. Not the unfinished feelings. Not the past she kept revisiting emotionally. Because while she was looking backward, the person who truly loved her had quietly walked away. The next morning, she barely slept. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes as she sat alone in the kitchen. Coffee untouched. Mind restless. For the first time in years, she felt genuine fear. Not fear of being alone. Fear that she had permanently lost someone who would never come back. And somehow, that felt worse. Impulsively, she grabbed her phone again and booked the next available flight. Not because she had a perfect plan. Not because she expected forgiveness. But because sitting still hurt too much. She needed to see him. Needed to explain. Needed to try. Even if it was already too late. Hours later, she stood inside another airport terminal. This time alone. And the irony hurt deeply, because now, she finally understood what he must have felt standing there waiting for her. The uncertainty, the silence, the hope slowly turning into pain. A painful lump formed in her throat as boarding was announced. And suddenly, she realized something terrifying. What if he no longer wanted her to come after him? What if the plane he boarded last night wasn't just a trip, but the moment he emotionally left her forever? That thought followed her all the way onto the plane. Heavy, unanswered, and impossible to escape. Because sometimes, the scariest part of losing someone isn't the goodbye. It's realizing they may finally be happier without you. The city looked colder in person. Maybe because she arrived alone. Or maybe because everything felt different knowing he was somewhere here. Choosing not to speak to her, she stepped out of the taxi slowly, staring up at the tall apartment building the company had arranged for him. Luxury glass walls reflected the grey afternoon sky. Elegant, distant, just like him now. Her fingers tightened around her phone as nervousness settled into her chest. She had imagined this moment the entire flight. What she would say. How she would apologize. How she would explain that seeing her ex meant nothing compared to losing him. But now that she was finally here, none of the words felt enough. The receptionist looked up politely. "Can I help you?" She swallowed nervously. "I'm here to see Ethan Carter." The woman typed something into the computer, then paused. "I'm sorry, miss. Mr. Carter is currently in a meeting." Her heart sank slightly. "Can you just tell him Olivia is here?" she asked quietly. The receptionist nodded. "Please wait." Those 10 minutes felt longer than the entire flight. Every second stretched painfully as she sat in the silent lobby watching the elevator doors. Hoping, praying. Then finally, the elevator opened, and he walked out. The moment their eyes met, everything inside her tightened instantly. Because he looked different. Not physically, emotionally. Calmer, colder. Like someone who had spent the last 24 hours finally accepting reality. He stopped a few feet away from her. No smile. No anger. Just distance. "You came," he said quietly. Not warmly. Not coldly. Simply stating a fact. She stood up immediately. "I had to," she whispered. Silence settled between them. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Because both of them knew this conversation wasn't going to erase what happened. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. The words rushed out before fear could stop them. "I should have never made you wait like that. I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were," he interrupted softly. That caught her off guard. His eyes stayed calm. "You made a choice, Olivia." The honesty in his voice hurt more than yelling ever could. "It wasn't like that," she replied desperately. "Then what was it?" he asked quietly. She opened her mouth, but no answer came. Because deep down, she didn't fully understand her herself. Why did she give so much emotional space to someone from her past while slowly neglecting the person standing beside her? Why did she assume he would always stay no matter how little chosen he felt? He looked at her silently for a moment, then sighed softly. "I loved you enough to wait," he said. His voice remained calm. But eventually, people get tired of standing alone. That sentence shattered something inside her. Because now she finally saw the truth clearly. The airport wasn't where she lost him. It was simply the first time he stopped hiding how hurt he already was. And somehow, that made everything even more painful. His words stayed in her mind long after the conversation paused. People get tired of standing alone. Simple, quiet, but devastating. Because for the first time, she truly understood how lonely he must have felt beside her. Not physically, emotionally. The kind of loneliness that slowly destroys a relationship while both people pretend everything is still okay. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. Her voice trembled slightly now. Not from fear of losing the argument. From fear she had already lost him completely. He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "I know." That surprised her. Because she expected anger, blame, bitterness. But his exhaustion felt worse than all of that combined. "You're not a bad person, Olivia," he continued quietly. You just stopped realizing how much I was giving while asking for almost nothing back. The truth in those words hit painfully hard. Because he was right. He never demanded control. Never stopped her from talking to people. Never created drama. All he wanted was to feel important to her. Chosen. And somehow, she failed to give him even that. Tears slowly rolled down her face now. Not dramatic tears. Real ones. The kind that come when denial finally breaks. "I love you," she whispered desperately. The words echoed softly between them. And for a second, his expression shifted slightly. Pain. Old emotion. Old memories. Still there beneath the calm surface. But then it faded again. Because love alone wasn't the problem anymore. Trust was. Priority was. Emotional safety was. "You loved me," he corrected gently. Her chest tightened instantly. "No," she said quickly. "I still do." He looked away briefly toward the giant city windows, as if searching for the right words. Then finally, "Maybe you do," he admitted softly. "But sometimes love isn't enough when someone keeps feeling second place." Silence filled the space again. Heavy. Final. She stepped closer carefully. "Tell me what to do," she whispered. "Tell me how to fix this." That question once would have made him fight harder for them. Once. But now. He looked tired. Not of her. Of trying alone. "You can't fix everything after it breaks," he said quietly. And that sentence terrified her. Because suddenly, this no longer felt like a temporary separation. It felt like the slow ending of something she thought would always survive. Her breathing became uneven again as panic crept back into her chest. "I came all the way here for you," she said softly. "I know," he replied. No warmth. No rejection. Just honesty. "And I'm glad you did," he added after a pause. That gave her hope for one brief second. Until he continued. "Because now you finally understand how it feels to chase someone who already started letting go." The words landed gently. But they shattered her completely. Because deep down, she knew he was right. For months, he had been chasing reassurance from someone emotionally drifting away. And only now, when she felt him slipping beyond reach, did she realize how much damage silence can do to love. Neither of them spoke for a while. The silence between them felt heavy now. Not angry. Not chaotic. Just painful. Like two people finally standing in front of a truth they could no longer avoid. Olivia wiped her tears slowly, trying to steady her breathing. "I really thought we'd make it," she whispered. Ethan looked at her quietly. "So did I." That answer hurt more than rejection. Because it meant he had once believed in them completely. Maybe more than she ever realized. Outside the giant windows, the city lights glowed against the dark evening sky. Beautiful. Distant. Temporary. Just like the relationship they once thought would last forever. "I don't hate you," Ethan said after a long pause. "And I probably never will." Her eyes filled again instantly. Because those words sounded less like hope, and more like goodbye. She stepped closer one final time. "Is this really it?" she asked softly. The question lingered painfully between them. Ethan looked at her for a moment before answering. "I think part of us ended before the airport," he admitted quietly. "The airport was just the first time I stopped pretending everything was okay." That truth settled deep inside her chest. Heavy. Permanent. Because she finally understood something too late. Relationships rarely break in one dramatic moment. They break slowly. Through neglect. Distance. Unspoken pain. And people assuming love alone will hold everything together. Tears rolled silently down her face as she lowered her eyes. For the first time, she had nothing left to argue. No explanation. No excuse. Just regret. Real regret. Ethan picked up his coat slowly, then looked at her one last time. Not with anger. Not even resentment. Just sadness for something that could have been beautiful if both of them had protected it equally. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said quietly. Then he turned and walked toward the elevator. Olivia stood frozen in place, watching him disappear little by little, just like she watched that plane disappear into the night sky. Except this time, she understood the meaning behind it. And this time, He never looked back.